Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar called Top Tips for Starting a Bookkeeping Practice. So if you're just starting out or thinking of starting out, or perhaps you started out a while ago but looking to improve things, then this is the webinar for you. The webinar will take about 45 minutes to an hour, but we'll see how that goes. If you have any questions at all, please do put them in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll come to them when we can. Thanks a lot. So just to introduce myself, my name's Gareth Salomon. I'm a chartered accountant. I've always been heavily involved in the bookkeeping side of things. My first trainee job was in 2003. I've worked in small, medium and large practices, started my own practice in 2010, and I founded Xenon Connect in 2020. Xenon Connect is software which plugs into Xero and QuickBooks Online and detects likely bookkeeping errors for the bookkeeper and accountant to review and push back the corrections to the ledgers. And Xenon Connect's been nominated for 3 categories at the upcoming Luca Awards at the ICB Bookkeeper Summit in November. But this webinar is not about me or Xenon Connect. We have 4 fantastic bookkeepers who've gone through the process of setting up their own bookkeeping practice and are bursting at the seams with knowledge. So I'm very excited to introduce the experts to you now. So we'll go through each one. So first of all, Kirsty St. John, thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Kirsty. I run a limited company, Kirsty's Accounting Services in March in Cambridgeshire, which is sort of Peterborough, Ely. I started my business in my company in 2007, but my license in 2009. Mostly limited companies in March, doing VAT, return, payroll, usual stuff. QuickBooks and Xero for me. And yeah, happy to be here. Let's hope I can pick up some tips as well.
Well, thank you for being here, Kirsty. Fantastic. Lara, you up next, please.
Hi, I'm Lara Manton. I run LJM Bookkeeping. I've been going a similar time to Kirsty, so I've been in ICB practice since 2011, but I went limited 2 years ago. I am a Xero-only practice, very into software and processes. I'm a sole practitioner, and yeah. It's great to see so many other ICB bookkeepers on the webinar today.
It's like it's a bit of a club here, I think, isn't it? I think it just happened by chance. I mean, it must be that all the best bookkeepers are ICB, surely.
Absolutely, all of them.
Fantastic. Okay, Suzannah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Suzannah Whelan. My practice is Sinclair Whelan Bookkeeping, based in Billericay in Essex. I set up in 2009, just after doing my ICB qualifications, which I did when I was on maternity leave from having my second baby. Complete career change, and threw myself in at the deep end, really, with just not any experience, but you pick it up as you go along, as long as you've got your qualifications. And yeah, so been going since 2009. And I love what I do.
Fantastic. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Tim.
Tim Chilestone, based in Guernsey. We're on TCS Ltd. Started the company in 2019. We're the only people who currently on the webinar aren't an ICB practice, but we are in the process of becoming one. I've done a few in the opposite direction, and spent sort of 23 years mostly working in commercial settings, doing bookkeeping, accounting, and so on for other people. And the opportunity, or rather circumstances, conspired to push me into starting TCS in 2019. We now have 6.5 members of staff, and mostly work with hospitality clients.
Fantastic. And I think Tim definitely wins for the best view out of the window. Before the webinar, he's just pointed the camera outside. Got a lovely view. Do you want to show us, Tim?
Oh yeah, we'll give it a go. Hold on. Let's see if I drop the camera now. Now the pressure's on and everybody's watching.
Look at that. Fantastic.
Yeah, he wins. I've got a kebab shop.
Yeah, if you can't see a castle and a couple of islands out of your window, then you're not.
Well, you're in the wrong job.
Well, thank you very much all for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do so. So let's get started. So top tips for starting a bookkeeping business. The first set of tips that we're going to look at really to do with structure and requirements. So as bookkeepers, we all know more than most that starting out a business will involve a certain amount of admin burden. So Tim, talk us through your tips for getting set up in business correctly.
So the first sort of bullet point that's on screen at the moment is one that a lot of people often overlook, and it's really important to consider, but you're not necessarily stuck with your decision forever and ever, which is the good news. You have to really consider, and it'll be discussed more later. You have to really consider where you want your practice to end up. You know, do you want in 5 years to be absolutely enormous and employing 50 people, or are you just going to work on your own? And that will inform your legal structure. Now, for me in Guernsey, it's very simple. I became a limited company because we have a 0% rate of corporation tax. But for most people watching from the UK, that's not going to be a factor. So you really do need to consider, you know, what potential liability might you have if you're not a limited company, which you know, could potentially be. There are pros and cons to that, and you do need to research those, speak to someone who's knowledgeable about it, and consider all of them. But then even if you don't become a limited liability company, a lot of that can be mitigated by ensuring, swiftly on to the next point, that you have the correct insurance in place. I think that a lot of people don't really quite comprehend the amount of insurance you need to have as a professional bookkeeper, or that you ideally should have. But the good news is it doesn't tend to be horrifically expensive. So PI, professional indemnity insurance, is a must. But you also need to consider, are you going to employ anyone, in which case you need employer's liability insurance? Are you going to have people come into your office, or are you going to go into their office, in which case you're going to need public liability insurance? And then just generally, you know, are you insuring your equipment? Are you insuring the premises you work from? All the sort of normal day-to-day insurances. So really, really important just to speak to a couple of insurers and get an idea on the absolute best level of insurance that you can get within whatever your budget is when you're starting out.
Fantastic. And I think I remember when I started in practice, you've hit all the nail on the head then in terms of the main insurances. There seemed to be a load of other ones which I wasn't sure whether I needed or not, and it could be difficult. So things like key man insurance, all different things, which aren't necessary to actually start at the practice. And there can be that confusion, do we actually need these extra things? Because there's always that worry, are we uninsured for something? So I think it's great that you've listed the main points there, and that will really help people. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a load of miscellaneous other insurances as well. And I think what's really useful in the last few years is that insurers generally are required mostly to provide a plain English breakdown of exactly what does this cover and what does it not cover. And you will get, any insurance proposal is going to be 20, 30 pages long, but you need to sit down and read it all and understand it and ask questions to make sure that you understand what you're insured for, and more importantly, what you're not insured for, because some of the things you're not insured for might be irrelevant to you. You know, if you are solely going to work from one location, you maybe don't need business travel insurance, for example, but you do need to understand what you do and don't need, and how you're covered. Practice license, like I say, we don't have a practice license at the moment. I wish we already did, and it probably would have been easier to do that first, but like I said, this was a kind of, this company started as a bit of a victim of circumstances originally, due to a company I was previously working for that was a startup, doing what startups often do and falling apart very, very quickly. It was an airline startup, so luckily the aircraft didn't fall apart very, very quickly, just the company. The level of support that you get from ICB as a licensed member, or even, you know, the level of support that we even get as someone going through the process of becoming licensed is absolutely fantastic. And if you are starting a bookkeeping practice, I highly, highly recommend that you look into doing that first, if possible. And then they will also, ICB will also support you massively with AML requirements. So AML is the requirements get stricter every year. It gets more complex every year. And things that might seem really straightforward could raise red flags with money laundering. A great example of this is we work with a lot of hospitality clients. And in Guernsey, it can take 16 to 20 weeks to get a bank account opened. So people will often, if they're a business that takes cash, they'll often bank cash into their personal account, and then transfer it to whatever temporary business account they're using, sum up or whatever, that you can't pay cash into. That's the sort of thing that you need to know is actually a bit of a no-no for AML reasons, as well as doing all the AML checks when you take your clients on, which you really need to have a decent sort of system or a set of processes to perform those AML checks. You need to know what is going to cause a bank to go, hang on a minute, are you a money launderer? because that can cause significant issues. You get your bank account frozen and you're stuck, really.
Fantastic. So although there's this sort of overarching feeling that all these things relate to an admin burden and necessary evils associated with the four things here, if we think about it, each of these things are really there to help us or to help our clients. So the structure, are our assets protected personally? Are we running tax efficiently? So the insurance, are we financially protected if something unexpected happens? Practice license is there to ensure that a certain level of bookkeeping standards are upheld, and that bodies like the ICB can continue to provide support to its members. And AML, as you've mentioned, Tim, are we dealing with legitimate and reputable clients that we want to be associated with as a business owner? So that's fantastic. So a bit of a question on structure and requirements throughout the group. Did anyone find that the process of starting their own bookkeeping business gave them a different perspective or appreciation of what their clients go through when starting their own businesses?
When I started in 2000, I set my company up in 2007, and it didn't occur to me that I could be a sole trader at the time. I had a young baby, 6-month-old baby at the time. My husband was working, and I just wanted to protect our assets. You know, we had a mortgage, you know, and I didn't want any risk. So that's why I went limited to start with, to absolutely limit that liability. I didn't think about an end goal and selling or anything else. I just wanted to run my business.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
whereas I think I was the kind of opposite way of I didn't think I was going to grow into anything big. I didn't think I was going to be anything. I was kind of, and then as it grew, obviously after a few years, as it started to grow and things increased, it was then like, okay, one, my clients were getting a lot bigger, so it was like I needed to protect myself as well. If anything happened, I thought, oh, if the worst case happens, what? Although I've got my insurance in place, if the very, very, very worst happened, where was I going to be? And it was like, okay, now not only is it tax efficient, but the types of businesses I'm working with, the turnovers of those businesses, if a mistake was to cost me something, actually I needed to be protected. And then that kind of made me think, right, okay, again, this is bigger than, it's kind of that, it's bigger than I am as well in some regards. When you've got a limited company, it's very easy as a sole trader to kind of do yourself down a little bit and kind of be, oh well, it's just me, I'm just a sole trader. Whereas as a limited company, you've kind of, oh, actually it is just me, but it's a bit bigger than just me. So I think it is. And then I know that I guess every business goes through that. There's certain businesses that are going to be of our clients that always is going to be the same as Kirsty, always going to start up as a limited company, always whatever, dependent on their industry, whatever. And there's some people that kind of like accidental business owners of some regards, or think, oh yeah, I'll just
or things grew a bit faster than they thought. And
then kind of get to it. And I think Tim's point, I think it's quite good to have that idea, because changing from a sole trader into a limited company is a heck of a lot of work for anybody.
So many, particularly in the bookkeeping industry, I've heard that.
It's an absolute pain. So it's because especially with all the HMRC requirements, having to get re-registered with everything, all your licenses, or everything like that. So if you do have ambitions, even if it's 5-10 years down the line, look at what you want to grow into and look at where you're going to be, because you might be better starting out from day one as a limited company, just to save yourself the headache, and have that all in place.
For me, unless you've got a really good reason to be a sole trader, partnership or something else, then I don't see why, especially what does it cost in the UK now to register a limited company, like 13 quid or something. There's really no barrier to it at all. Like here it costs 1,200 quid. But I still kind of encourage everyone that I meet to be a limited company for both the tax efficiency, but also just, you know, like you say, for the what if the worst does happen. Like, you might never be able to imagine a day when you do something so, in the eyes of a client, so terrible that they decide they're going to sue you. And like, do you want them to come after your house? You know, do you want them to be able to go after your personal assets? No, of course you don't. So those things need to be protected, and the best way of doing that is limited liability company.
So I'm still a sole trader. I set up as a sole trader. Like Lara, didn't really expect to, I thought it was just going to be a little bit of work, sort of part-time on the side. Didn't really have any long-term goals or aspirations with it. It was just kind of see what happens. And I am still a sole trader, partly because of as Lara says, there's lots of complications with changing and licenses and agent codes and all of that. but actually the tax efficiencies now are not as good. So I'm kind of stuck between the, you know, I think I'm going to stay as I am for the time being. I haven't really got any need to change. And I do quite like being a sole trader. I like that the money is all mine. I'm the same entity as my business. And
All mine.
there are
Mine.
advantages, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, the tax advantages of being a limited company are not, they have been eroded over the last few years. It's not as attractive as it was. I think had I reached this stage that I'm at now, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I probably would have changed.
Yeah.
But now it just doesn't seem as,
That's good,
the need isn't as urgent for me. So,
but that also helps you because you're in the exact mindset of some clients that are growing, and you know you're fully aware of that. Actually, it's probably not worth it. Might be worth it for you, and you know you're fully up to date with those calculations. So that's really helpful to clients, I would think, because I wouldn't have a clue. I'd have to, you know, because I'm not licensed for self-assessment tax. So, you know, anything that's related to that is, you know, above my pay grade.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing. I remember thinking at the beginning that I didn't want to do limited company accounts, and I didn't really want to have to engage an accountant to do my limited company accounts. And I am licensed for self-assessments, and
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's just, but it's like Tim says, it's really important to think it through at the beginning and know what the options are. Even if you sort of set up as sole trader, you know that there is the possibility of changing further down the line.
Yeah, you're not committed forever. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I think there's always the risk that because we're involved in the financial side of things, we feel like we're expected to know the answer to these things when it's not necessarily the case. So I know we come on to it later on, but just ask people, you know, if we're not sure about things, even if it's to do with the financial side of things, you know, there's that community there that we'll discuss later. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So next slide is knowledge and training. So the term bookkeeper is a protected word. This means that anyone else can call themselves a bookkeeper and masquerade as a seller of bookkeeping services. This inevitably results in a wide spectrum of ability and knowledge within the bookkeeping world, which ultimately filters through to a wide range of quality provided to the average end client. So in terms of knowledge and training, what tips do you have to ensure that you're always at the high end of the bookkeeping quality spectrum? I know we're going to go to Kirsty on this one first, please.
So yeah, as the slide says there, I started. Funnily enough, I find the original email when I was looking around at the various bodies when I first was looking at training. It was 2007. I was off on maternity leave, and I did my exams when I was off on maternity leave. Mad person I am. But I had got some good feedback from the ICB after first conversations, and they, you know, straight away they've offered the full support all the way. You know, you can do this, and you've got these benefits, and this training, and this CPD, and this will help you, and you know the full list of stuff. And it just felt like, and ever since it's been like you're in a family, you know. I mean, you know, as the community's grown, and I moved on to starting up a branch, and because there wasn't one in our area, but you just get that support. You can all of the events that we ever go to, you know, and then you just knowing that we've got a technical helpline. So I'm sure other bodies have helplines as well, but just knowing that if you get stuck, if you know, ask a friend, yes, but ask your supervisor. If you need help, that really helps.
And I have to say, ICB really came into their own over COVID, didn't they? With ICB TV and all the, you know, we had, I think at one point they were almost daily, the webinars.
Yeah, God bless Jackie.
They were really supportive. Yeah, especially with all the legislation changes and everything we were being bombarded with, and you know, in such a scary time. So yeah, at that point, I think I've never been more glad to be part of a professional body.
Yeah, totally agree. The advice, the kind of, you know, was up to date and able for us to then dish it out to our customers, who are obviously straight away going, what's going on? And I'm like, hang on, I need today's episode to give me an update. It changed last night.
Fantastic. Okay, and the next point, Kirsty, please.
So getting practice experience. Now that was tricky, and I think that's an ongoing issue that lots of people come. It's like a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? Lots of people say, well, I can't get a job without experience, and equally, I'm scared to let someone in. I'm kind of cautious to let someone in to get some experience, knowing that that might expose me to a risk. So it is tricky to know exactly how to go about that. I'd be interested to get everyone else's opinions on that one.
One of the things that I did was I got to know a local accountant, and she passed me my first couple of clients and was really, really, I mean, I was very lucky. She was very supportive and almost, I wouldn't say mentored me, but it was like having someone who I could check things with, you know, what nominal code should I post this to, or how do I do this journal? And that really gave me confidence.
That's amazing.
Because I knew that she was looking over my work for me, and that I wasn't going to be putting the client at any risk by me doing something stupid, or, you know, getting something wrong. So that's really good if you can get something like that. I mean, that really helped me and made me sort of really grow in confidence.
And my first few clients always had external accountants, and so I was used to, you know, sort of say to them, if I'm doing, you know, if I'm coding things wrong, or you want it done in a different way, or what's a better way, you know,
please let me know.
Get the feedback.
And that practical experience is really important. And from the theoretical point of view, obviously, when we're building our knowledge and exam based, we're building that knowledge up. That's pushing us towards saying, yep, we're confident we can actually do this. We can start out on our own. On the other side of things, maybe you've got that imposter syndrome that says, is always telling us, no, I can't do this. So a question for you all, I suppose, is how do you know when you're ready to start out on your own? Is there an answer to that?
No.
No.
No, I'm 4.5 years in and I'm still not ready. Like,
I think if you waited until you thought you were ready, you never feel ready, I think.
No, exactly. You can't sort of decide, right, you know, on the 1st of December next year, I would have done these exams, I would have done this, and I'll be ready. You just have to, I think a lot of people some people plan, right, I'm going to start my own business, I'm going to provide bookkeeping services, that's what I'm going to do. But a lot of us just get into it by accident because of the experience that we've had in the past. Like, I'm a prime example of that. I spent 20 years working in accounts departments, and in your head you always think, okay, you go from accounts assistant and then you're a senior accounts assistant, and then maybe you'll do CIMA or ACCA and become an accountant. But it's actually, no, if you're really good at and enjoy the transactional side of things, then you sort of take a bit of a swerve and become a bookkeeper, because that's actually what you're already doing. So you have to kind of talk yourself up a little bit and be like, no, I can do this, and I am already doing this, and I'm never going to be ready otherwise.
One of the biggest things I think that was a shock to start with is that when you get the training books are always very nice and you've got all the information and they balance and they're beautiful. What they don't teach you is that in real life you've got a mystery 50p, or this doesn't match, and where the hell did that go? And you know, I often joke to my clients when I'm sending them going, you know, signed Miss Marple or Poirot or whatever, because it feels like that sometimes. But equally, when the kind of mystery 50p comes back and you go, oh, I saw it, but, you know, random numbers like £26.39, you go, oh, I saw that. Where did I find it? It's maybe it's just the way my brain works, but I reckon it's the way we all work, to be honest. We are very much a circle closer. We are a completer finisher. That's the kind of people that we are. I get such satisfaction.
I think there's a difference between being ready and also taking on something that you're not ready for. So I think there's two levels of that. There's the actually this is beyond my knowledge and I can't do this, and actually being able to say no, I'm not ready to take this on, or I'm not there. But equally, there's the level of, well, actually I do know this, I know the theoretical side behind it, but I haven't had that practical experience. I can very quickly get that up to date in enough in the way that I want to be, so that I can complete this. So it's a thing of, you've got to push yourself but know where your boundaries are, because obviously if you need to take on that work to gain knowledge and to gain real life experience, but equally know when you say, hang on, I need support, whether that's another ICB bookkeeper that has additional knowledge, whether that's an accountant, whatever it is, to say, actually this is beyond me now. I'm better handling this over.
Don't be afraid to say no. You know, you're kind of comfortable with this, and even if you are in theory qualified to do it, if you're not comfortable doing it, say no. You know, pass it on. Plenty of ICB family to pass it to, or other bookkeepers and accountants to do it.
Sick. Okay, getting a mentor, Kirsty.
Well, I remember a long time ago being very brave at an ICB summit to talk to the QuickBooks lady, which was Sylvia Borhill. She was like, you know, QuickBooks queen, and I was brave enough to talk to her and ask her a question. And you know, she was so approachable and friendly, and you know, and I didn't feel stupid asking a question. And you know, she's now a colleague. She's my vice chair with me on the advisory council, but she's also a friend. And I ended up doing some subcontract work for her, and it was like the first time I did some, and it's like I didn't get told off, must have done it right, you know. It's kind of reassuring to know, but having other people that you know, like, you know, Claire Allen and these people that we used to see, and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be brave enough to talk to them and ask them some questions and aspire to be what they are, and then eventually you think, wow, you know, not that I'm there yet, but you know, you definitely feel that now other people ask me questions, and you're like, oh.
Well, you're on this webinar right now.
Yeah, no, that's a bit scary.
Yeah.
Eventually, you just have to sort of get over your fear of talking to other people. And like, you know, we were at Accountancy earlier this year and saw Lara walking along, and we never met her. We were like, "Oi, are you Lara?" and sometimes you just have to sort of get in people's way and be like, "Right, I want to talk to you. Talk to me."
I think the thing is, we're generally a friendly bunch, aren't we?
Very,
so
very
if you do ever see us anywhere, or do ever sort of see us on social media or on Facebook groups and want to ask questions, I think a lot of us will happily answer, spend some time and talk you through our experiences.
People don't tend to gatekeep their sort of skills and knowledge in this industry, I don't find.
No,
you know, I mean, I do have the advantage of being in a very small area where everybody knows each other, but even then I can call one of about 20 different accountants and bookkeepers and say, hey, like, I've got this thing, I think I'm going to do this, what do you reckon? And I'll get a 15-minute conversation about what they reckon and probably come away with a better idea of what I'm going to do with it, or the reassurance that my idea was right.
Was right in the first place.
Exactly. So and it's always worth doing that, because most people are really, really happy to sort of share their knowledge and experience, and especially those that have been doing it a really long time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was asking a question of, I think it was Penny and Suzannah the other day, and by the time I'd written it out to ask them the question, I'm like, no, I'm sure that what I'm doing is right, but it's still nice to get that feedback of, that's what I do, that's what I do. Well, but equally, like Tim said, everyone's very friendly. If you happen to come across a garage, for example, and you've never done a garage before, just ask around and go, right, what pitfalls am I looking out for? And everyone will go, MOTs, or what's this, or what's that, you know, or run. Like, I'm never touching a pub, ever.
I think the other thing as well is that people see the people that are visible in the industry, and they think we got there by like not we haven't followed the same process. So things like this are great, because actually it took me like 8 years to get visible and be out and about and get out of my comfort zone and do things like, but it's like they think we've built a practice, or this whole kind of, we've spent years, we might have only had 1 or 2 clients in the first year, we might have grown very slowly, we've been through all those challenges of getting clients and getting to that stage and come out the other side, as opposed to, it's not like we woke up one morning and ran a bookkeeping practice with 50 clients. That wasn't how it worked. We've been through all of those challenges. We've asked ourselves all of those questions. We've asked other people all of those questions. So it is that shared knowledge that we've gained from other people as well that we can pass down on to the kind of people starting out now.
Yeah, and I suppose it's not been hoodwinked that everything you see on social media is actually, you know, reality. Everyone obviously projects the best of what they do generally. I think people are more aware of it nowadays in the last few years, but just because someone looks like they're doing success, you know, a lot of success within their own business, they don't tell you necessarily about the hard work that's gone into that. So yeah, it's been aware of that as well. Fantastic.
If you look at the sort of some of the LinkedIn influencers that do constantly go on about how very, very difficult and how very awkward their life is and how much hard work they've had to do and how they've had to work 90 hours a week, most of those ones are not the people you want to listen to. You want to listen to the people who are talking about more day-to-day things, and rather than this whole like grind and hustle culture, it's so, you know, what does a typical day in my life look like? Or, oh, you know, I've managed to grow my practice sufficiently that I actually have a day off.
A day off. Congratulations, in the sunshine on a boat.
I know. I had one the other week. It was amazing. I can't remember it, but
Okay, Suzannah, the last point on the slide for you two.
Yeah, so one of the first things I did when I set up, because social media wasn't such a big thing then, certainly not, there wasn't like bookkeeper groups and stuff back then on social media to learn from, but you can register with HMRC for things like agent updates and employer bulletins, and you get loads of information from that. They keep you informed of like legislation changes and upcoming issues, and that I found invaluable, and I still read them every time they come out. You pick up loads of information. And then also a lot of the softwares will send out the similar legislation updates or software updates or just general industry news. And some of the other ones that I was going to mention were ones like Accounting Web, XU Magazine, ones like that. So yeah, I definitely would recommend registering for those and reading them. You can read them when you're having your lunch, things like that. It's just a bit of a no-brainer.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so the next one, who will and won't you serve? So many of the attendees on this webinar will be employed as a bookkeeper. They won't have much say in who they work with, unless they change their employer, of course. But that isn't the case, is it, for a self-employed bookkeeper, Tim?
no. So I think there's, I'm going to refer to LinkedIn again because it's a prime example of this. There are two opposing schools of thought on this. And one is that to be successful, you've got to find your niche and you need to stick in your niche and you mustn't ever stray from it. And that's how you'll become an incredibly successful bookkeeper. And the other one is, no, don't do that. Basically, you need to be varied and you need some variety. And actually, for me, it's kind of a bit of both. When I started TCS, we leaned heavily towards the hospitality industry, and the reason for that is I've got quite a background in that industry, so I know a lot about it. And many bookkeepers will never touch any pubs and restaurants, but we actually target them because we know a lot about them. Now, for me, that almost was our downfall a little bit, because obviously we started in February 2019 and we all know what happened 13 months later, and the hospitality industry completely shut down. Now, for us here as well in Guernsey, we were really lucky. We had 2 lockdowns in total, one in 2020 and one in 2021. But that first lockdown that was about 13 weeks long, hospitality was simply closed. There was barely any support. And everyone ran out of money, stopped paying their fees, and it was like, oh well, is that it? Are we done after this short amount of time? And luckily we got through it, and everyone reopened, and everyone started to pay us back the fees that they hadn't paid us, despite us doing loads of work for them during lockdown, which was lovely. And they all had an amazing 2020 when we were all stuck on the island and couldn't go in or out. But I decided at that point that we needed to diversify a little bit. So we do still focus on hospitality, and it's around hospitality and retail is around 60 to 65% of our client base. But we absolutely ensure, like, my kind of rule now is that it's never going to be more than 65%. And actually I want it to be more like 55. So we actively pursue a more diverse client base. And there are pros and cons to diversify. Do you want to offer your services to simply everyone, or do you want to offer your services to a few specific sectors? Because you can become more of an expert in those sectors. I can sit down with a pub or restaurant owner and review all of their accounts and give them actual ideas and insight into where they can make more
information.
Money.
Yeah,
exactly, because I know their business, and I have to spend time. If we take on another sector, like we've got a couple of PR companies on our books. I worked for a PR company 20 years ago, so although my knowledge is not the most up to date, I understand basically how the industry works. And that's, so if you are going to head towards a niche, the first thing to consider is, and this kind of is already on to the second point, is I wouldn't recommend making one sector 100% of your client base.
Same for clients. Don't let one client get too big, because
exactly that as well. Yeah. And some I know a couple of practice owners who actually have like a hard and fast rule where they won't take a client on if that client is going to be too much of a percentage of their work, because then your risk if that client leaves with 30 days notice is that you suddenly lost 25% of your income, maybe.
I had that with a large payroll client. I was doing weekly and monthly payroll, for like 300 people plus the monthlies, and yeah, suddenly they decided at a risk for being I was a sort of a single practitioner, and they decided to take it to a bureau, which was a relief that I could actually be poorly on a Monday night if I needed to be, or have a Tuesday off, but suddenly had the summer off and kind of come back to September, child going back to school, and I'm like, ooh, those invoices look a lot lower than they were. Had to replace a fairly big client quite quickly. Hence started subcontracting for a side split. But yeah, that is you have to keep an eye on not just how big any one client is in your time demanding as well as money split.
Yeah,
definitely.
and obviously in the early days when you first start a practice, you might temporarily, although it goes against what we just said, you might temporarily have to overlook your own advice and our advice there, because for your first 6 months, first year, maybe you might have to rely on this one client who's your main first client. And I certainly
name known, and yeah,
exactly.
And also from the niche side of things, it's some of us know. I didn't know what I wanted to niche in. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So yeah, that first sort of year is finding out what you like doing, what clients you like working with. The niche doesn't necessarily need to be industry based. It can be female-led businesses. It can be businesses of a certain size, a certain turnover, service-based, retail-based, all sorts of, or even what software you use. So there's lots of ways of niching. And there's lots, but you need a little bit of that experience, and you're gonna, your first couple of clients, they're gonna be the big ones, but then you can understand, okay, are they right for me? Do I like doing this? Are these the types of clients I like working with? So you're gonna have a probably 18-month learning period around your business, I would have said, while you grow, while you get to know other clients, while you start taking on different things, until they can then start to say, right, okay, this is what I like. This is these are the people I like working with. This is where I want to take it in a little bit more of a focused direction.
I mean, like that's a great example actually, because it's like one of the things that I think a lot of people don't ever consider actually is whether you're primarily working with B2B or B2C businesses, because those can be very, very different. Like we only have 2 B2B clients because I absolutely hate and detest doing sales ledger work, so we don't tend to take on a lot of B2B clients. But you might love it. Sales ledger might be your absolute favorite thing, in which case if you take on a load of B2C clients, you're going to be really disappointed because there isn't any.
So it's interesting. I tend to do some stats. I prefer sort of limited companies and just dealing with that. I can check them out at Companies House. You feel a bit more that the business owners are more responsible with their money or looking after the company's interest, sort of thing. It's
a generalisation, Kirsty.
Sorry, that's my experience in 15 years. That's my experience.
So client characteristics and personalities, Kirsty. So this is one that people might not really think of. It's more like sort of a bit of a softer thing, which is behind the scenes, but nevertheless, we get to decide who we work with. So we want those people ideally to be nice and perhaps even, our sort of person that we'd normally potentially hang out with as well. So what are these considerations with characteristics and personalities?
Well, you have to kind of, again, it goes back to how you're going to work. If you're sort of at home in your office, are you going to be wanting people to be dropping paperwork off, or are they sort of IT type people that they are switched on enough to be able to send you everything electronically and make your life smooth? Are they kind of sort of stuck in the mud people that you have to ask the same thing 5 times, like I really need that receipt, or you're not getting that backlined? If you feel like you're pulling teeth out of people all the time, it's not a pleasure to do those clients. Whereas other people, you kind of think, right, first of the month, and you go, oh, they've sent me the bank statement already, or whatever it might be. Some people are a pleasure. I did actually have to go, when I gave a client notice one time, and it kind of came to the fact that, look, I just don't enjoy working with you anymore. And as soon as I said it, I'm like, I can't believe I just did that. But it had been brewing for a while. But you're right. This is our choice. We get to choose, and that's nice.
I think it's hard though, isn't it? I mean, in retrospect, it's quite easy to say this, but when we're first starting out, we want to jump at every fee. It's just a natural reaction. We need money
you
to
worry
make
that
this
you
business
never
work.
know where the next one's coming.
Well, my rule actually, when we talked about niching, but I never had a niche. But when I set up, I had a rule, and my rule was I'm not going to work with anyone I don't like, and I'm not going to work with anyone whose ethics I don't agree with. You know, anyone who's trying it on constantly. You know, with anything dodgy. I'm not doing that, and I've stuck to that, and that has served me well. And it's one of the reasons I enjoy what I do so much, because I really like all my clients.
Yeah, it makes a big difference to your day-to-day work. You don't see the phone ring and you go, oh, I don't want to talk to them. Or the email and you go, God, what do they want now?
Yeah.
That's kind of a rule that we didn't start out with, but we definitely added, or are trying to add as we go along, because there's some people that are just like you say, you dread them phoning, you dread them emailing. You don't. That's not why you're starting your own business. You're not starting your own business to absolutely hate everybody.
And I think the thing is, people don't realise that you think about the start of the business and you think about where you are. And I've got clients that I've had for 9, 10 plus years. I think as bookkeepers, we tend to have possibly a less client turnover than accountants do. So if you're a good bookkeeper and you build a good relationship, that client could be with you for decades.
Yeah, exactly. I've had over 10 years.
Yeah, me too.
So you don't want to be in a situation where you're like, it was a good idea at the time, or I thought it was a good idea at the time because the money was good at the time, and now actually I've kind of regretted, and now I don't know how to get myself out of this situation, because as Kirsty said, we tend to be fixers and helpers and that sort of personality, so it can be very difficult to say to a client, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to go elsewhere. This isn't working for me. So that's one of the things that we kind of, you have got to kind of set your boundaries and have a bit of an idea. And you're going to come across people that you think are brilliant to start out with, and then find that they're not really, and you're gonna have the odd client leave, and you're gonna have the odd client that you really like leave, and you're gonna have the odd client who turns into a nightmare client when you, for whatever reason. So it's not hard and fast, but there are some kind of, you need to have a little bit of an idea, and certainly some boundaries around that, and be able to say no, and say, sorry, this isn't for me, and sorry, you're going to have to find somewhere else. And actually that is very difficult to do, especially when you're first starting out, or especially if they've been with you since you first started out.
Interested to hear from the others if you think you can pick it up. I mean, I hate doing the sales discovery calls, it terrifies me, but you know, do you think you can pick it up quite quickly, what they're going to be like?
You can, I've definitely have done. I remember in my early days having a call from a really it didn't sound like a very nice bloke at all. It was, you know, telling me what he wanted to pay, and that it was all very basic and straightforward, and you know, and he just didn't sound very nice, and I just said, no, I don't think I'm going to be able to help you with this one, and I put the phone down, and I was so relieved. And that's one of the great things about being in charge. It's your business and you can decide. You're not working for anyone else who says you've got to phone this guy and deal with him. You just don't have to do it.
The other thing you can do sometimes is, like, we've got a couple of industry sectors that we are absolutely never, ever, ever, ever going to work with again, mostly because the people, at least here, that operate in those industry sectors tend to be, well, I said I wasn't going to swear on this webinar, so I won't. But we are lucky enough that we found another bookkeeper on Ireland who absolutely loves working with some of these people. Perfect. So when those people call us, and that's a really good, if you can work out who to refer these people to, then they actually come away with a really good feeling, because even though what you're really saying is, God, no, I'm not working with you, the actual words
you've come across as helpful.
The actual words you say is, look, we don't really feel we have the best knowledge in this sector, but I want to refer you to, you know, this person, because their company is absolutely the expert at your industry sector. You're going to get the best service from there, and it would be, you know, remiss of me to accept your work when I know that you'd get a much better service from those people. But you just have to find who that person is first. But there is always someone out there. There's always someone who really loves working with whatever it is that you don't want to work with.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, in this whole kind of collaboration over competition. There is so much work out there, and everyone works in a very different way. So there's so much that you can, as Tim said, if you don't like something, That's absolutely fine. Just find someone who does, because you are going to come across as helpful. And I've had people that I've only spent 5 minutes on the phone with them, and my answer's been no, but my answer, like Tim, has been no, but I can recommend you to someone who can, and they will get you sorted. And it wasn't that I just thought, oh no, this isn't the right client for me, this isn't, whatever the way they want to work isn't right. So it wasn't necessarily kind of a niche thing or anything, it was just the way they're set up. But then I thought, oh, actually I know someone that would be interested in working that way, or wanted to help and wanted to do this and the other. So you can do that and kind of use your community around you to build up that network to refer to other people.
Fantastic. And that sort of covers the last point as well. Don't be desperate for the fee. Is the client a good fit, Lara, which we sort of discussed.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is when you're starting out, you look at, like, you can be very money orientated in your own practice. So it's like, oh, how much are they going to pay me, rather than, is this the right client for me? And as I say, the first couple you might get a feel whether they are and they aren't, and you're going to take on the odd bad one here and there. But if you get a real gut feeling, and if they're dragging their feet on AML or other stuff, or you get, as Suzannah said, you get kind of people asking questions, and sometimes it's questions they ask, oh yeah, can this go through, or oh yeah, my old accountant used to let me, or the Dave down the pub, as we all know, that kind of thing. If you get that feeling, don't be afraid to say no, because you will save yourself a lot of headache and heartache in the long run by actually not taking it on. And what you might find is you're in a worse off situation than you take them on, and then they won't pay extra, or as you grow and whatever else. So it becomes the hardest thing when starting out is to say no, I think, is one of the hardest things. And I think you have to be brave about it and just stick to your guns.
So this kind of brings us into getting our first client and the buzz what you feel when we get that first client. But there's so many routes we could go down, and people tell you different ways work best for them. But I'm really interested to find out what's worked for you guys in terms of getting those first clients, which channels. So Lara, kick us off, please.
So when I set up my bookkeeping practice, I just moved to the town I'm now in. I didn't know a single person here. So I walked around town with business cards and knocked on every business's door, and went in and introduced myself and asked them if they had a bookkeeper, or what their sort of bookkeeping setup was, what they were doing. And actually I have 2 clients that are still clients from that very first time. One did go away and came back. But yeah, so again, I'm not a salesy person. I don't think some of us are. I'm not a salesy person, but having that kind of face-to-face interaction and just saying, hi, I'm new here and I've just set up a business and I don't know what your situation is, but can I introduce myself and can I learn a little bit about your business, was a really good thing. So I did that, and I also advertised we have a local town magazine, and it was like 25 quid to put an advert in or something like that. So I did that. Obviously, like 12 years ago, Facebook wasn't as prolific as it is now, or the Facebook for the groups and the sort of social media side of things. But also kind of talk to, as Suzannah said, talk to local accountants. You can always approach people and say, look, I'm a new bookkeeper set up in the area, or would you be interested in a mutually beneficial agreement, or working in a way that can help both of us, and see what they say. Because even the big accounting practices sometimes don't have the support staff and don't want to do the bookkeeping. So some of them are really grateful for having a bookkeeper they can refer work to. And then you can build a relationship that might be, as Suzannah said, you relying, like asking them for advice, asking like helping on limited company year ends, or whatever it is. You can build that sort of relationship,
or referring clients to them. If the clients have come to you for bookkeeping and they want more, then go talk to that process. Very much.
So I think you've got to make yourself visible. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. As much as I hate sales, and it's not my forte, it does get a bit easier the further along you get, I think, just with experience. But you don't need to be salesy. You just need to be yourself. You need to ask some questions. You need to put yourself out there. You can't just put a website up or social media up and clients are going to find you. That's not how it works. You actually have to put some effort in, and it doesn't need to be it also doesn't need to be spending thousands of pounds on Google Ads and SEO and all the rest of it, but there has to be some sort of effort from your part to kind of go out and find those first clients.
Yeah,
I did the same as you. I did a leaflet drop when I first moved here, because we'd moved to a new town, new baby, didn't know anyone. It wasn't until my son started school that I got to know more people around the town. But yeah, we did a leaflet drop as well to start with.
Yeah.
We,
So yeah, for me,
picked up
word of mouth was how I got my clients, particularly at the beginning, and still do. I'm not particularly salesy, and just telling everyone what you know what you do, dropping it into conversation. So that accountant that I sort of got work from at the beginning and who helped me, she was a mum that I knew from NCT, and then we bumped into each other at the park and got chatting, and I didn't know she was an accountant and she didn't know I was a bookkeeper until we started chatting about it. And so you don't know, you can just mention it and it can open doors. And then even like telling things like when you're chatting with the hairdresser, or if you've got a plumber come round,
managed to drop it in conversation,
you know, or when when they give you the invoice, you can say, oh, I recognise that software, or just things like that, and dropping it in. And then also educate your friends and family, let them know what you do, and ask them to tell people if they, if they're having a conversation with a friend about their business. And I got a client that way. Some friends were chatting to somebody else, and he was saying, we're having a nightmare in our business, we really do need to get someone in to do our finances, the accountant, we only speak to them once a year, or we need someone in on a more regular basis. And they said, oh, what about Suzannah? And then they put us in touch, and that was that became quite a big client for a long time. So your friends and family can often do the salesy bit that you don't like. They can do that for you, and get them to follow your social media and like and share your posts, because that helps as well.
Most towns, I don't know if you necessarily want local clients, but we have a March free discussion sort of page, and if anyone sort of companies or whatever putting on going, oh, does anyone know a good accountant? All my friends will tag me, and it's like, I'm not an accountant, but in your eyes we're the same. So because
I think personal recommendation actually is more valuable than anything.
Agreed.
So
almost all of our work.
Almost
all of our work has come from word of mouth. We did during the second COVID lockdown, we did have actually a bit of a boost on that occasion from everyone closing down, because I just decided I was going to make an absolute nuisance of myself, and be incredibly visible on social media. And every time the States released an update on what was going on, we would stick our logo on it and share it again, as like with the points that related to local businesses. And I knew it was working, where one day I got an email from somebody in the tax office that said, hey, like, we've got this person who's really, really struggling to fill in their payroll co-funding form. Like, can you help them? And I was like, yeah, amazing. Give them my number. And that kind of that lockdown actually gave us a bit of a boost, where the first one almost killed us. But yeah, look, word of mouth is absolutely
your client. Ask your clients when you get a client, get them to tell their friends who've got businesses.
And don't forget to ask your clients when they come how they heard of you, just so that you kind of get a bit of a feel for what's working and what isn't.
But also, maybe one of the things that's worth pointing out is, so we've been doing a lot of stuff recently on not actually directly advertising our business, but just being visible. And I think that is really, really important. You're not necessarily putting out adverts saying, hey,
ramming it down their throats.
Exactly. But you're being visible. So then when somebody says, oh, you need a bookkeeper, I'd recommend this person. Then the person who's asking for the recommendations has already seen your name, and they've already seen that you exist. You're not some mystical person.
And it gives you that credibility.
It does, and it makes them feel better about it. They're like, oh yeah, I've heard of ABC Bookkeeping, amazing. I will give them a call because my friend recommended them, and they're more likely to get in touch because of that.
Solid advice. And I just want to point out at this point that looks like we are going to be running past 11 o'clock, because we've got so much great conversation going on. So if anybody has to leave,
too much, sorry.
No, it's great. It's what we're after. If anyone has to leave, we will send out a link to the recording after. But we'll crack on. But obviously, if the panelists have to leave as well,
No,
Don't.
I'm good.
Okay, let's crack on to the next one anyway. So what you will and won't do. So it's kind of like the question of who you will and won't work for. It also applies to services as well. And the danger is always that it can be hard to say no to people when they ask us to do something. And because most people want to be in a position to help, especially when there's an additional fee on the line, it can be difficult. So Tim, first, how do we ensure that we're only providing the services that we want to offer?
So you, annoyingly, first you need to decide which services you are and are not going to offer. And for us, that meant that we have kind of in the past strayed into areas we didn't really want to, and that has because I didn't think about it enough when I was starting out, and that's why I can now say that you absolutely must consider it. I, for example, don't want to do anything involving directors' personal tax returns if they own property, because it makes it more complex and it takes it outside of my skill set and what I'm able to do. And I don't really want to, generally don't want to do it. And there could be any number of different things that you don't want to get involved in, especially as most people watching this are UK based. There's things like, do you maybe not want to deal with anyone who has a CIS requirement, for example? Do you want to not deal with anybody, you might not want to deal with landlords, or you might think they're your niche, I don't know, but
yeah.
Whatever it is, you need to decide what services you do and don't offer. And especially for my business, because we push ourselves more as like small business support, people will ask us constantly, can you do this little extra thing? And it'll be like, oh, I don't suppose, you couldn't like knock up a quick website for us, could you? No, I can't. No. Like, oh, can you look after our like Facebook and that? No, I can't. But that said, if you've got a list of things you're not going to do for people, then again, as we said in the previous slide, you can have a contact there that you can refer them to who can do that for them. But in terms of deciding what you will and won't offer, get that written down. Like, really do be strict with yourself. That's something you absolutely must stick to. And this is going to go backwards and forwards a bit between the two first points, because that will help you avoid scope creep. Because if you've written down on a bit of paper, here are the services that I offer and here are the services that I do not offer, and there's maybe a third column of here are services I'd like to offer in the future when I'm able to. Okay. Yeah. So for me, in Guernsey, we have a population management regime to do with employment. And I always knew that I wanted to offer more services around that. But until we got to a certain size, I was unable to do that. So now we do, but that was always something where for the last couple of years I had to say to people, look, we can't really help with that at the moment. You're either going to have to come back to us in 6 months, or you're going to have to speak to X, Y, and Z. But the most important is the first two: what you do, what you can do, and what you can't do, and make sure all that is outlined in your letters of engagement as well. So outline what someone has engaged you to do and review that regularly. And if somebody asks you to do something because, oh yeah, you're the bookkeeper, can you do X? Right? Yeah, maybe you can, but review that client's letter of engagement first and see, actually, are you charging them for that? Like, is that included in the services that you offer? Because once you do a little bit extra for somebody once without charging, they're going to always expect you to do extra without charging. And then when you suddenly do charge them extra outside of scope, they're going to say, well, hang on a minute, like, I've already paid you all this money. Why am I paying you this? If you're clear up front about what is and isn't included in people's fee, then it's very, very useful. And, that list of what you will and won't do, you can, even if you want, you can share that with your clients. You can say, look, just so you know, these are all the services you can possibly have from me. Don't bother asking me to do these things.
Yeah. And making it clear those are the ones you're licensed to do. It's
well,
not
yeah,
that
exactly,
you don't,
exactly.
And also, what's their responsibility and what's your responsibility?
Yeah.
And then you don't have that. Well, I thought you were doing it. No, it's not in my letter of engagement.
And I mean, we use Go Proposal for letters of engagement. There are, other similar services are available all over the place from various different people. But one of the reasons I like Go Proposal is the language that the LOEs are written in is very, very clear, and it's your responsibilities as a client are X, you are responsible for XXX, and if you do not do this, I cannot do my job properly. And that's super, super important. And off-the-shelf letter of engagements are all over the place. Make sure you review them, make sure you know the content of them inside out, backwards and forwards. Ask someone who's more experienced for advice. Ask them to review it. If you have access to solicitor or anything like that you can ask to review those documents for you without charging you loads of money, amazing. If not, find another bookkeeper, find another accountant, get someone to review your templates, because they're very, very long documents and they're very, very detailed and very, very intricate. And it only takes one clause to be wrong for you to find yourself potentially in a position that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, and there is obviously, if you're an ICB practice, there is a ICB template letter of engagement on the website in the practice documents. But again, tweak it, make it work for you, tweak the bits you need, leave all the legal stuff in there, leave all the GDPR stuff in there, data protection and all the AML stuff, but tweak the rest of it for what works for you. But equally, you might find, as I did, and I'm the same as Tim, I progressed from that into using something like Go Proposal to have that kind of additional information. And I don't do payroll, I don't do tax. I'm very clear with my clients. I do more of the financial support, the admin support, the bookkeeping, the day-to-day, the outsourced accounts department. But when I first started out, and even now, there's lots of people going, oh, well, you don't do self-assessment, you haven't done your level 4s, you haven't done payroll, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And it's like, well, actually, no, because I do the bits that I like, and I'm good at the bits that I do, and I enjoy the bits that I do. So actually, it doesn't make me any less of a bookkeeper because I don't have F in front of my name instead of an M. I'm not any less of a bookkeeper or any less of a business. It's the great thing is you can build the business you want. So if that, whatever that was, if you want to be a payroll only bureau, be a payroll only bureau. If you love Kirsty and I, we've got another guy now, or Links branch and AGCO, who loves doing tax returns. Doesn't like any of the bookkeeping, but loves doing tax returns.
Exactly.
He has a whole practice
One
doing
absolute
other
lunatic.
bookkeepers, doing outsourced.
Absolutely, but a useful lunatic to know for me.
And he will do tax returns and self-assessments for other bookkeepers. So being able to outsource work to him. So just pick don't feel pressured into having to do everything, having to learn all the softwares, all the systems, everything. Work with what works best for you, because at the end of the day, it's your business. You have the right to decide how and what it looks like, not social media, not other peers. You make the choices, so you pick what works for you.
Yeah, it's the same with the softwares, isn't it? So, I mean, like your Xero only, I do QuickBooks and Xero, but I gained some clients because of Xero only practice in Wales, of all places. She didn't want to do any QuickBooks and passed it along. So, she's like, oh, do you want to do this? And had a lovely Zoom with one of the people in Wales one day, and we got chatting about the weather, and he was like, what do you mean it's raining? It's really sunny here. And I'm like, well, I am across the country from you. He didn't know. He didn't need to know. It was, the ability to do the bits that we like. I like, it's all part of what you will and won't offer. You get to choose. This is the beauty of running your business.
So that's the thing, isn't it? And then, as I say, you surround yourselves with other people that can do what you can.
You don't.
The bits you don't, whether that's technical, whether that's payroll, whether it's software based, whether it's whatever it is, you can do that, and it helps you define your offering better so that you can focus on the bits of your business that you can do, and you can learn the bits that you're good at, and you can excel your knowledge in that. So like Tim was saying, you want to become known as the person in your area that can do that for you. So if you're kind of, you can build your expertise and your reputation around a specific piece of software or a specific service with that knowledge of actually, because sometimes at the start it can be very overwhelming and you can kind of try and be a jack of all trades, and actually you don't necessarily need to do that. You can work on a few bits, go and try softwares, go and see what works for you, but don't feel pressured into having to learn 5 different accounting softwares, because actually as a sole practitioner, keeping up to date with 5 different accounting softwares is going to take an awful lot of your time and a lot of mind space and a lot of effort. So actually, by niching slightly in that, you can reduce down, you can build your expertise in a certain area and sort of have that and feel more. That's going to help you feel more confident, and you're going to learn what you can and can't do on that, and then have your network for stuff you can't do.
Great advice. Thank you. Okay. The environment. So for anyone employed or self-employed, I've personally found that the happiness or lack of within a position is strongly correlated to their working environment. much more so than the level of pay. Do we agree? What points have we got regarding the environment that we're working with? So Tim, let's kick us off.
I mean, we've all seen out my window, right?
Yeah, you win the day.
For me, I really, really detest working from home. Like, absolutely cannot stand it. And I was very, very clear when I started this, I'm not working from home. It's not happening. So when I first started it, I was lucky enough that I was able to borrow a corner of somebody's office. I have to go to an office every day. I cannot work from home. Lockdown was awful, right? Our house really isn't set up for working from home anyway, but that's really not the main reason. I just can't stand it. And for me, the reason is that I can't switch off. If I work at home, then I will end up working from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. even though I don't need to, because it's there and I can't separate it. Okay, now everyone's very different with this, and this is why I
think the other three of us would agree with that bit. It's hard to switch off. It's always there.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, it still is hard to switch off, right? I don't leave the office at 5:30 and like, oh, that's it, leave it till tomorrow. You know, people do call, people do email. I do find myself working late on occasion, but I knew that in order to not completely overwhelm myself, I needed that separation. Okay, so that's what I did. Now, many other people will prefer working from home, but this is the reason I really don't enjoy the constant narrative from a lot of people that, oh, working from home is the best solution. It's not. It might be for you, it might not be. Everybody is different. Some people might need to leave the house and go elsewhere and work. That might be an office space, it might be a co-working space, it might be, you know, local coffee shop, whatever it is. But some people will prefer working from home, and that'll be absolutely the right choice for them. So that is something you really do need to consider. And the other thing is whether you're going to go into client offices or not. It's another thing I was very strict about. I'm not, you know, I had someone quite early on say, oh, you know, we want to take you on and we sort of envisage you come in 2 mornings a week. I said, no. That's not how I'm setting this business up. And that's not how a lot of these businesses work. I'm not a temp. I'm not coming into your office and sitting at one of your desks and behaving like a member of part-time staff. Because if you're in a client's office, you can only really do work for that client at that time. You can't answer a quick call from another client. You can't think, oh, well, actually, I can push this till this afternoon because this deadline is more important. Again, that type of setup, though, may work for some people and often does. I know another bookkeeper here on Ireland who does that very successfully. She's a little older. She's been doing it for like 25 years. And she works for about 8 clients and she visits them at specific times during the week. Doesn't work from home, doesn't have an office, always in client offices. For me, that wasn't going to work. My point here is that absolutely everybody is different, but you know what's best for you. Don't let yourself be swayed. You know, if you, like me, are adamant you're not going to go and work in client offices, say no thank you to that client that insists you must work in their office. If you know that working from home is not going to be for you, then you need to factor into when you're planning your business, when you're thinking about how much money you need to be earning every month, you need to factor into your costings the rent on an office space or a co-working space, you know, fixed desk or whatever that is. And you need to really think about that. And if you are going to work from home, you need to consider your setup at home. Have you got, or do you need a separate room, or are you going to be perfectly happy on the dining room table? You know, and on it goes really, but it has to be right for you and not what 50 other people on LinkedIn are going to tell you.
That's so funny that you say it like that. I used to go out to client sites most of the time, and it was like Monday I was here and Tuesday, Wednesday, and whatever, you know, busy calendar, working out what's where. And then you know, so I'd have a laptop. I hate working on a laptop actually as it is. So I'd take a keyboard, I'd take a tilty thing, so the screen's at a better angle. You end up lugging the gear, and you know, and it's like wake up and go, what day is it? Tuesday, I'm going there. What day is it? Where am I going today? It was very chaotic. I did have a setup at home, and because it wasn't at home, working at home much, I used to have to clear away if we had, you know, I was on the dining table, and it was fine most of the time because we'd eat in the other room. But like for big things like Christmas, we'd want to use the proper table and have to clear everything away and that sort of thing. But then, you know, circumstances changed at home, and I'm at home all the time. I'm in my spare room, which is, you know, just an office, and occasionally go to a client, but I'm like, oh, I've got to remember to do that. I won't be there long. Do I have to take the laptop? If I don't take my laptop charger, then I can only be there an hour or so. You know, kind of. But occasionally have clients to your house, but you have to be aware of that. There's a difference insurance thing with the, you know, do you want clients at home? I have clients drop in paperwork and we have a chat on the doorstep or in the, I let them in if it's cold. You know, so, you know, nice little old man used to drop some paperwork off and we discuss strictly every week. You know, you do what works for you. You know, so you two are both at home, aren't you?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. But I think what you need to realize is wherever you are, you need a proper setup that's going to work for you. So as Kirsty's saying, don't be, yes, you can run everything off a mid-spec laptop that's going to be able to run the software, can be able to run this cloud-based, but don't skimp on keyboards with number pads on. I mean, I think most of us have dual screens at least.
3.
And it is nice to have a dedicated area. I mean, I've got a little office, and I wouldn't want to be working off the dining room table or kitchen table or something. You need
privacy as well.
Shut the door on it at the end of the day, which helps a bit anyway with trying to know your
control those hours.
Be working. I'm not that good at that, but at the same time, I do like working from home.
And equally, also like making sure that if you're comfortable, you're going to be more productive. So proper desk, proper chair can make things a lot easier. You don't want to be getting up from your desk every night and not being able to stand up straight. That's not going to help anyone. You know, if you're uncomfortable and you don't want to be thinking about your environment when you're working. You want to be thinking about your work. Yeah.
Sometimes my only steps are from here down all the way downstairs to the kettle, you know, or if the dog needs a wee when she was here, you know, that's like the furthest point away. But you have to consider how good you are at time management. Certainly as my son's got older, he's 16 now, he one of the things that because they need you less and they talk to you less, you know, you kind of think, oh well, I could just go back to work after tea and do a few more hours. And my office is next to his bedroom, so actually that was a good reason to stop. It's like, I'm going to bed now, Mum, would you stop tapping away? Oh yeah, all right, you know, because there's always something to do. That's the trouble.
And I think the working out, setting your boundaries and setting your times. I'm not good. My husband tells me off all the time.
Suzannah works in long hours. I know you do, don't you?
But having that and making sure that you can switch off and whatever that looks like. And as I say, for some people, I mean, some people love working from an office. Some people, if you're someone that needs people around you as well, if you work better in an environment that needs people around you, or I'm one for, I don't. I mean, you can control your own environment at home. I'm not one for music. I'm not one, but work out what works for you to get you in the zone and just be aware. And obviously, the thing with working from home sometimes as well is remember to get up from your desk because it's very easy to be sat at a desk for 4, 5, 6 hours and you're thinking, I haven't had a drink, I haven't had a coffee, I haven't had whatever. But don't get into bad habits. I know that you can do Pomodoro timers, you can do all sorts of things. People set those alarms on their phone to remind them to get up every hour and go for a walk and look away from the screen and do whatever. But just kind of make sure, don't feel like you have to do anything, but make sure that it works for you.
I used to get complaints of being late starting to cook tea, but it's because I was just like, I'll just finish this bank rec or I'll just do this. Oh, where's that thing gone? And, you know, you look and you're like, oh, shit, you know, an hour's just gone past without, I didn't mean to. That's time management.
In terms of like setting boundaries as well, one of the things that I've been trying to do recently, because in my mind it was a mistake when I first started, is to not let people call my mobile anymore. So I've got an office phone. If you're working on your own, you maybe don't need you get a second mobile or get a landline number, or, you know, there are plenty of voice over IP services for about £6 a month where you can get a nice landline number that diverts to your mobile, but at the time you've decided you've finished working, whatever time that is, that can just go to voicemail, or you can send it to someone like Moneypenny to answer or whatever. That for me is making a huge difference, because now there's only about 4 people who regularly call my mobile because they think that they really urgently need something at 7 p.m. and if I ignore them a few more times, they'll stop doing that. But in terms of setting boundaries with clients, I think you sort of say to people, if you've got a real emergency, maybe send me a message. But apart from that, these are my working hours. So please try and respect that. I know there's a couple of practices that I've seen where they don't work Friday afternoons, for example, and they're very, very strict about it. And if you call them on a Friday afternoon, you're not going to get hold of them. And if that's the sort of thing you need to do to keep your sort of mental health where it needs to be, then you absolutely should do that. My only recommendation in terms of desk setup and equipment is two things. Get a sit-stand desk if you can, because even standing up for 20 minutes a day makes a huge difference. And also just get the most comfy chair that you can possibly afford. It doesn't have to be the most expensive. It doesn't have to be the most technically advanced. It doesn't have to have the best lumbar support or whatever it is that everyone tells you need. Just go to an office furniture place, sit in a load of chairs, decide which one you can sit in for 8 hours a day, because you're gonna sit in it for 8 hours a day at some point.
Yeah,
and if you really do need to get away from the office, I think we can take a leaf out of Suzannah's book. Can't we, Suzannah? Because I saw a video on LinkedIn the other day.
Oh no.
Yes.
So learn to paddleboard effectively. So you went with Penelope, didn't you? And,
I went with Penny, yeah, and she's put it all over social media and made me do it online as well.
Yeah.
Or go for my way and go and spend the afternoon on the golf course.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Software. So looking at new packages can be one of the more interesting parts of the journey. So when employed as a bookkeeper, we tend to be stuck with what our employer wants us to use, but we've got an opportunity when we're self-employed to actually decide what works for us as a bookkeeper. So Suzannah, do you want to start off with your advice for looking at software when you're out starting in practice?
Yeah, so when I did all my training, everything was Sage, and it was Sage 50, Sage Line 50. So it was the really old-fashioned desktop. But what I would say, and now is there's so many different softwares, accounting softwares out there, and then you can do lots of free trials. There's often free certification. So have a look, play around on them, and see which ones you prefer, and sort of get to know them with the free trials. And you can do one-on-one demos and stuff like that. So that's really useful. There's also all the different apps and stuff now, and add-on softwares, which can get quite overwhelming. So focus on one thing at a time. Maybe look at your cloud software first, then look at things like the data capture software or the practice management software, pricing software, things like that, and try and be kind of quite streamlined with how you look at it. Don't sort of go with a sort of scattergun approach. One of the things that I found really useful as well was going to events like Accountex and Digital Accountancy Show and things like that, because you get to see all the new things that are out there. And it's a good thing to try and do all this, if you can, before you get too many clients, because it only gets harder the busier you get. But also don't feel like you need to know something inside out, because you will learn it as you use it. You pick it up as you go along. So yeah, that was my advice really on that. And use your account managers as well, and build relationships with them, because they're really helpful. They can often give you like a free license for your own accounts, which you can practice on, and they give you free training and other resources. So yeah,
I think that's the thing. And also, if you've followed some of the steps in previous slides, if you've got an idea and you're going to niche in a specific industry, go and do some research about softwares that best fit that industry. In theory, the main softwares do exactly the same thing, but different softwares will be better suited to different types of clients. So go and have a think about where you're going to niche, have a think about what clients you want to take on, and have a think about the best software that might fit that client. Because then again, as you start to learn it, and you're going to add, there's thousands and thousands of add-ons. Obviously there's ones we recommend, like Xenon Connect, for everyone. But go and have a look at things that are out there, and go and build your kind of ideal app stack, or bits that you know, or bits that you can go, and then if a client comes to you with an issue, go and do some research. Go and ask in Facebook groups, go and ask other bookkeepers, go and Google, LinkedIn, whatever, and look at different pieces of software. That's how I found a lot of my client-facing software, is actually like all the add-ons, is by a client going, I've got this problem.
Yeah.
You go out and you go and research it and go, oh, well, actually that one, and I'll have a couple of demos, and I think that one's going to work better for them, and also look at what it integrates, because having lots of software that doesn't talk to one another becomes more and more of a burden to actually maintain. So even with all your in-house practice stuff, try and get it as integrated as possible, because otherwise you're going to waste loads of time rekeying information.
There's a good again, going back to ICB, but there's a good page with some of the software accreditations, and so that's actually reviewed by real people with real practices, and they'll kind of go, this bit works really well, this bit's on the roadmap to get better, and that can really help. And then if you need further information, I'm sure all of us would be happy to pick up the phone and go, actually I really liked that bit, or this will really help. But
that's it. Talk to other bookkeepers about what they use and what they like.
It's a bit like Kirsty and I did a webinar. I did a call with one of Kirsty's clients, with her, they were looking at changing a piece of software, and it was to an alternative for that same sort of thing, and I'd used the alternative, so I jumped on a call with Kirsty to talk her client through it, to say, these are the pros and cons, this is where, and in the end they actually decided to stick with their current piece of software, but use people out there and use your network. And as I say, if you don't know that piece of software but you know someone that does, ask them questions about it. See if they'll talk to your client about it. See if you can ask them, get some questions from your client you can pass on, all those kind of things. As I say, we're a pretty friendly bunch. We will help out in the majority of time where we can. So just don't be afraid to kind of say, I've got this problem, or my client's got this problem. Who can help with me? With me. But also don't get, as you say, overwhelmed. You can sit there like the Xero App Store or the add-ons for QuickBooks or whatever, and there are thousands, and it's like, where do I begin? So,
and a lot of them are absolutely terrible as well. Like that's the thing. People often assume that if an app is on the Xero App Store, it must be amazing, right? But there are about, I don't know, at last count, about 28 billion apps on the Xero App Store, right? They're not all good, okay? And so it's really important to speak to other people that have used those, especially before you commit to something. Most software, luckily now, doesn't have a minimum term. If you don't like it, you can cancel it 30 days and just they're no longer billing you, and it kicks you out. But some things do have a longer commitment, especially if you want cheaper rates, you need to pay for a year up front or whatever. Do the free trials. We have always had a demo account on. We use primarily Sage and QuickBooks, but a little bit of Xero as well, because I really don't like it, but that's a story for another day. But we've always kept a demo account on each of those platforms, so that if we want to try out any apps, we sign up for that using the demo company on each of our platforms. And then you can mess around with it and try and chuck real examples of transactions so that you're going to encounter in real life, and see how it responds. And ideally we tend to mostly stick to things that integrate with all three of those platforms. Gareth,
by the end of year
end of this year,
end of a year. No, we're looking forward to it. But I think at the same time, we don't allow our recommendations and our choice of apps to be driven by or rather the choice of accounting platforms to be driven by the integration steps that people need. We don't want to do stuff manually, but there's always a solution, right? If you've got a customer who you really, really, really think should be on Xero, but for whatever reason they're just hesitant to move, or they want to move from QuickBooks to Xero or Sage, say, but they don't want to do it until their year end, which is reasonable and realistic. What are you going to do in the interim? You might have 5, 6, 7 months left. How are you going to handle that process between now and then? And then that's good, because you've got training time, then you've got a roadmap on how you're going to move them over. But really just do that research. And I can't recommend more highly having a sort of demo account on each of the main platforms that you use, because it just allows you to mess around and also just go, I wonder what would happen if I did X. And because you're using a demo account, you don't then have to go and unpick the mess you just created in your own books.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? But it's finding, and I mean, as Tim said, he doesn't like Xero. There's some of us here that really like Xero. So don't be offended by, work out what works for you. And sometimes it's just a visual thing. Sometimes it's a way it's laid out. Sometimes it's the way they call things in the software. So if you're really struggling with a piece of software, just don't feel like, even if it's one of the big ones, don't feel like you have to continue using it, because you're not going to be able to offer your clients the best service on that software if you're struggling to use it.
You're just not as efficient, are you? If you're
No,
forever
not as
looking
efficient.
around for the, and what becomes annoying, I think, if using two, it's like, the reporting in QuickBooks is really good and I know exactly what I need to get. And if I go to Xero and I'm like, why can't I just click on that and get all the detail? And, you know, there maybe get the detail, but in a different way. Sometimes it can just be really frustrating. And there's no point giving ourselves that frustration if you know, you don't need to.
Yeah, and as we've said, there's enough people out there using different softwares, and different niches. As we mentioned, Penny a couple of times, she's got a niche in a specific
She's listening in the car actually on her way up to Accountancy for next week.
Yeah, but she uses a piece of software that none of us use. So there's other things out there that there's other people out there that will have pieces of software that they really like working with that will suit specific types of clients as well. So don't be afraid to say, well, I don't work in QuickBooks, I don't work in whatever, but so and so does, and the reason I don't work is because I can't offer you my best service, because at the end of the day you're doing your clients a disservice by struggling and by not offering them, and by trying. There's a difference between trying and struggling, but if you're really struggling with something, you're doing your clients a disservice by trying to continue with
there'll always be that bit of friction there, because you'll think, oh, I've got to do that now, or oh, I've got to do that. And I don't know about you guys, but you know, there's a possibility it might slip to the bottom of the list because you might do your favourite jobs first.
So,
no, never.
I think that phrase, Helen Bauer said it to me once, eat the frog. You have to tackle that big job. But
on that point as well, that everything that we've just said about software applies not just to accounting software, but to all of your software. Are you going to use Windows or Mac? Are you going to use, you know, like I pay for an email app, which a lot of people think is insane. But I pay to use Superhuman because it genuinely speeds up dealing with email for me, and it works well with my brain. You know, are you gonna, if you have remote meetings with your clients, are you gonna use Zoom or Google Meet or Teams or something else? You know, are you gonna produce, if you need to write reports to people, are you gonna do that using Word or Pages or something more specific? You know, it applies to, are you gonna use Google Chrome or Safari or Edge or Firefox or what? It applies to absolutely everything, because you need to be efficient, really, and you need to be comfortable with what you're using.
And they all need to talk to each other as well. So like I do use Microsoft OneDrive, but I'm not very much a Microsoft person. I'm a Google girl, you know, I live in Google, but equally I hate Google Sheets. You know, I love Excel, but that's what I learned. That's what I trained on, you know, that sort of stuff. It's but we all have our little.
It's creating your own bespoke system, isn't it? It's you have control. Again, it's all about control and what you want. You have the control to build. If you want to use bits of Google and you want to use bits of Microsoft and you want to use Chrome and with whatever, it's what works for you. You don't feel like you're tied to anything. Or you have to use something because someone does it. A lot of the software, as you say, a lot of the software will work on Macs. Some of them don't, or don't work as well, but a lot of softwares will work on Macs. So you pick what, if you're used to being a Mac user, you're used to the iPhones and all the rest of it, or if you hate iPhones and you're an Android user and you're used to Google and all the rest of it, pick what works for you.
Pick your family and stay with it.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, we've got 2 slides left. Next one is processes. So processes.
Freeze. Processes. They're in my head, and they need to get better at. Sorry, you froze there, Gareth.
No. Oh, sorry. You crack on.
Yeah, we were just sort of my branch meeting on Tuesday night was about systems and processes and how we can use them to be exactly that, to be more efficient. I found something that helps me is sort of time blocking. Again, on my Google Calendar, I have certain clients that I want to do certain days, and I kind of try and make myself book some time, switch the apps and switch the notifications off. You know, just some head down, I need to get this done sort of time. try not to be restricted to having spent 4 years doing weekly payroll. I'm scarred, as you can tell. But one client, I do have a set day to do her on a Thursday, and in fact, I've had to shift. You know, but because they're doing a process where if they need some direct debits amending, they know that if it won't wait till Thursday, they have to tell me beforehand. So you have to agree deadlines with your clients, but otherwise you're in charge of your time. So if you work best in the morning, then you work in the mornings. If you need an afternoon walk after lunch, or for example, you need to, you know, you want to do your you know, some exercise in the morning and you work late at night, you go with what works best for you. But I think time blocking and making sure that you it's not just billable time. You have to make sure you're also building some time to work on your business with AML, the CPD, all the various webinars, HMRC, ICB software webinars. You know, put them in. Some of them you can kind of listen to while you're getting on with the filing, for example. I know we're electronic, but I do still have some actual paperwork. Some things you can do multitasking. Other times you need your full attention, and you have to make time to do that. Prioritizing work. Well, this comes from, I think we're all professional plate spinners. I actually, you know, think I need a mug for that. I used to be a buyer, and we were always working out of sync. So for me, Christmas was done and dusted by, well, we started it sort of January, February time, and it was in our warehouse and heading to Tesco's by August, because it had to get on the boats from China. I was a packaging buyer, and you know, with the lead times and stuff. So what I found works well for me is that if you've got say for example, it's the beginning of the month and you need to tell all of your clients that you need the new bank statements, you can automate that process. But equally, you then need to know that you can kind of check back in a few days and go, right, well, they have done it now, so I can do that bit of work. They need a reminder, I'll come back to it 2 or 3 days later. So you need to get quite good at, decide in your head, are you going to do it the way it comes in? I know lots of people apply that rule to the self-assessment tax returns. You know, you go on the bottom of the pile, you'll get done when you'll get done. You know, you can't ask for it earlier if you give it to me late, sort of thing. And obviously we all have those deadlines in our head. The 7th and the 19th are the ones that are particularly scarred in my head. Once you've had a CIS deadline missed by accident, you'll never do it again.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? We've got very set deadlines for things like 7th, 19th, 31st, things like that. But you need to set your own internal deadlines, because otherwise you're going to have clients that, yes, there's going to be some emergency stuff, but actually what clients think are emergencies aren't always what are the emergencies. So have some more kind of deadlines in your head around, or timelines in your head around that. And equally, again, if a client gives you a piece of work and it's out of the norm or it's out of something, you've got to say, right, okay, if I've got this in and I'm going to finish this by X, even if that's not in correlation with their year end or it's out of something, give yourself some internal deadlines, because otherwise you're just going to, yes, we jump from job to job, but you need to have some completion dates on some of these jobs so that you can then, right, okay, that's done and dusted, I can send that back to the client's going to be happy, they know it's all sorted, move on to the next thing.
Tim's point earlier about having the sort of not, you know, encouraging clients not to contact you. I know some of us work evenings or weekends. I every now and then I'll try and remember to make use of the delay send that I can do with the Google Mail. I think you can do it. Just because I'm working a weekend doesn't mean that they need to know that I was working the weekend. Well, it must look really suspicious when they get loads of emails at 8 o'clock on a Monday. But anyway,
that's why you always set it for 8:03. So.
Oh, okay. I'll try and remember that next time. That would probably upset my OCD, so I'm not sure I could do that. But the again, managing expectations. If a client thinks you're working, and they might then ping you back and answer straight away. I know lots of people say that they only do their emails like 2 or 3 times a day. Mine are always open, and if to be honest, if it's something I can quickly answer with 5 minutes, I will do it. Which I know many people say not to do it.
I'm the same, Kirsty, because it gets it off your list then.
Yeah. Exactly.
Although I'm trying to get better at filing them as well, so getting that inbox 0, and it's all these little things that I'm moving overwhelmed with. Getting rid of things, so like I'm done, it's dusted, client sorted, send it back, send it, file it. So I have been trying to do that a bit more now, rather than ending up like I don't have the 300 unread emails things. They're
Oh
read,
Lord,
but I'm
I've
trying to
got
get rid of them.
I'm a hoarder. I never get rid of things. It also comes
Mm.
as 20 years as a buyer, knowing I needed to cover my behind, and because you never just know when you might need to go. Well, I did tell you that you needed to do it,
Yeah.
or whatever. I love being able to produce a sort of just forward that on, going, well, you did agree that you would do. I mean, but that comes out of a stroppy buyer attitude from many years ago, standing up for my rights.
They're filed, Kirsty, not deleted. There's a difference.
Yeah, true. But so with the way my Google Mail works, it you can put the filters on, so it automatically puts labels on things. And I tend to leave things unread until I've dealt with them, and then when they're dealt with,
I snooze things again and again and again and again and again until I want to deal with them. But it's the same thing. It's just that my inbox looks completely empty, whereas Kirsty's is all nicely organised. But really, everything's snoozed. And if I go into snoozed, I've got. No, I'm not going to tell you how many emails I've got snoozed currently because it's embarrassing, frankly.
I'm going to have a look, see how many unread emails I've got.
And again, that's a good one for kind of don't be afraid if you're signing up for things like the software webinars and things like this and HMRC updates and whatever else. Don't be afraid to actually go and like get a separate free email address and use that to sign up to all of those and have it so your client work is separate from actually where all your information stuff's coming in.
I wish I'd known that many years ago when I started. Everything comes to me and it's tricky. I'm starting to get better with the client work, so I've set like client name at kirstysaccounting.com to try and help remove them, but there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, and especially like for because I have like a sort of team that works with me, and still people will like a lot of things will still come to me, and trying to update people's address books to say no, don't email me. Email, we've got shared email
or
address,
even if they're doing it to someone else, but I bet they want to CC you to make sure that you know about it.
Yeah, they do. Exactly.
Like you're reading it for info.
So writing down processes, Suzannah.
Okay, so this is something that I wish I'd done at the beginning and I didn't. Being on my own, I kept it all in my head. And over the last few years, I've implemented practice management software. So the last 2 points sort of go hand in hand. And it's really useful, actually, to think about your processes and to have, you will have different processes for different clients. Even if you're just doing bookkeeping, there will be different clients who have different requirements within that.
Sales, yes, no purchases, yes, no, they're all different on it.
All different softwares or whatever. So it's really useful to document them. And what I've been doing the last few years is trying to do that. And you could just write it all down, but actually, if you're using practice management software, you can go through it on there and have your workflows on there. And I'm constantly tweaking them, adding things. As things change, and it's just really useful because not only does it make you think things through and potentially prevents you from missing things that if you've got a job that you might only do once a quarter or once a year, it reminds you of the process of doing that. And it also means that if you do take on staff, or if you are a subcontractor, or I don't know, if you were ill and you needed to hand stuff over for a few months to another bookkeeper, then you've got those processes down already. Whereas if you are at that point, you're either going to be too busy or too sick or something to do that. So it's really good to have those processes all documented. And another thing that I've done, which is really useful, is I've done Loom videos for a lot of tasks, and you can embed that within the software, or you can just save them, and those are really useful not only for yourself if you want to remind yourself of how to do a task that you only do once a year, but also things you can do them for clients as well. So if you're taking on a new client and you're setting them up on Xero, for example, do a Loom video to show them how to connect the bank feed, because you can reuse that, you can send it out. Clients love it because it looks really professional, it's really easy for them to follow that process. And it just saves you having to keep repeatedly showing people, because you could just send out the Loom video, or how to raise an invoice for the first time if they're doing their own sales invoices on the software. And it's just really, I find that's really helped with my, saving me time but it also looks good, I think, to the client. It makes you look really organised and
if you don't like
professional.
talking to yourself on Loom, there's also ones like Tango out there that
Yeah.
can do the screenshots and things like that. So if you find the Loom videos quite awkward, or clients you prefer things in a PDF or in a system rather than in a video format, there are other alternatives out there like Tango and Scribe and other ones.
Yeah.
It's all really helpful. Okay. We made it to the
Then
last
what
slide.
do you do for your processes? Because you've got
For our
staff, haven't you?
processes. Yeah, so we in theory write them all down. We've got a load of process documents basically. We're quite hands-on as bookkeepers. Our clients tend to not do anything at all. So they never most of them have never logged into their account system ever. I do encourage them to do so, but they generally don't. So it is, all of our processes mostly are internal. So they're Loom videos now are great, but and I have used them in the past and they're fantastic, but we don't tend to have a lot of, for clients, this is how you do X, Y, and Z because it's us doing stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have like just a set of process documents. So like, okay, here is the process for here's the process for reconciling lottery tickets, here's the process for reconciling cash to bank, and so on and so forth. And what we maybe aren't as
That's
good at
a
as we
new
should
one
be,
on
but
me, reconciling lottery tickets.
Oh,
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a school day.
We've got retail clients,
Wow,
and
gosh.
yeah, the scratch card addiction is substantial.
Wonder
yeah,
what the stock loss on that's like and how you deal with that. Good question.
I'll tell you about that offline at some point because it's we've got a really good system for it, obviously. But yeah, a lot of this stuff is what the challenge is that when a process changes, you need to update it, and I think that's what a lot of people miss, and that's what we certainly often miss. Although we're better at it than maybe we were in the past.
This was the trouble with the processes that you kind of have one generic, and why I like the practice management software I've got at the moment that might be moving from is that you can use filters that you can do you yes, no, right, if not do this, and do you do this. But I'm struggling to kind of get my head around the whole, there's a whole world of other practice management software out there. So yeah.
I mean, with all of the practice management software, my advice on that is always just, demand a free trial, put some of your, it is time consuming, but put some of your workflows in it and see how it works for you, because a lot of the practice management software on a demo looks amazing, and when you actually get into it, it's awful. Because they've all of them have gravitated around one key feature each, and a lot of them then have let a lot of other things slide because they've got their one obsessive key feature, to the point where we're on the verge of just building our own. It's not as ridiculous as it sounds because we don't need like the HMRC integrations and things like that. But yeah, definitely free trials of practice management software, because some of it is so in depth that for most bookkeepers, because we are not doing audits and we are not tax accountants, for most of us it's going to be overkill. That said, there are some really, really excellent ones out there, and it's just finding the one that works best with your brain.
I think that's the thing is, some of the practice management softwares are very compliance based and don't work well if you're doing things outside of that. So even though you might have accountants singing the praises of a great practice management software, for a bookkeeper it might not actually work for you.
Cool.
Thank you all.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is the one that I'm really most interested in. Historically, it felt to me like starting out in business on your own was something that you had to struggle through. It was almost a rite of passage that if you were going to take the plunge, that it's something you had to work through on your own and earn. But it's not just the case nowadays, is it?
No, and I think that's the thing. I mean, Suzannah and Kirsty were saying we've been in business 10+ years, and even 10+ years ago, that was the way, wasn't it? There wasn't the Facebook groups. There was the ICB support, and there was various bits of that, but there wasn't the Facebook groups. There wasn't the WhatsApp groups. There wasn't
the branch. That's why I set one up.
The branches. There weren't all that kind of thing. So nowadays there are specific startup support, and then there is a lot of general support that you can do. I mean, Kirsty, yesterday or Wednesday you do your ICB webinars for new practices. There is a lot of places that you can ask questions, like events like this, to say to people, right, okay, pick our brains. Accountix, DAS, Accountancy North, we've got all these shows and all these things going on for people to kind of get some opinions. And we all started out, and the knowledge out there nowadays and the ability to find out more information nowadays versus when I think at least 3 of us started out is very, very different.
Shall we sound old and say they don't know how lucky they are?
I know.
So use that community support, whether it's your local ICB branch, whether it's Facebook groups, whether it's LinkedIn groups, whether it's webinars like this. Use that support. Pick the brains of the people that have been through it, because we're all on the same journey. We're just at different stages of our journey.
Yeah.
And I mean, I still speak to, we all talk between us, but we all sort of speak to people that have got staff, that have got whatever, what's the next step. We're all still constantly on that journey and looking at our options all the time. And actually, sometimes we learn things from you as well. So it is a two-way street. It's not there. But we don't know what we don't know. So until you ask those questions, until you speak to someone who might have a different perspective, who might have been through what you've been through, there isn't a stupid question. Whether it's practice-based or even whether it's technical-based, do not be afraid to ask questions, because the only thing you're going to gain is knowledge. There is no downside to asking questions, and we've all been there. There's things like HMRC manuals, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Tim, are thousands and thousands and thousands of pages long.
Yeah.
We can't know everything that's in them, because until you've come across a situation, you don't know what that situation, you may not have the technical knowledge around that situation, because it might have been a slightly different way to deal with it. So deal with that and use your community and use your support around you to find out those answers. There is no stupid question.
Who's I written fine, because I've got earphones in. Are you sure?
Mute Kirsty there.
Yeah, so definitely what you've said. And I think one of the things that really helped me sort of several years ago was when the Facebook groups started popping up, where you could ask questions or get to sort of, and it could be, like you said, anything from a technical question to how to deal with a client who's being like this, or a problem with an accountant, or how what software to use for this and stuff like that. So the thing that I would say to people as well is you can ask your questions on there, but also read other people's questions and the answers, because it might not be relevant to you now, but then you do pick up so much from doing that.
And I think the big thing, as we've said multiple times, is as well, don't feel pressured by what anyone else is doing, even what any of us are doing. There is no pressure. No one is judging you. You run your business your way. We've all started, we've all made whatever. This is the brilliant thing about this industry, and the great thing about the ICB is you build the business you want. So if you want 4 clients and you want to be on site with 4 clients, brilliant. If you want 500 clients and you want a team of 60 people, absolutely fine. You pick what your business looks like, because at the end of the day, it's your business and it's your happiness that is the most important thing. So success is what you make it, not what the outside world sees.
I totally agree with that, but it is very hard to not judge yourself compared to, there's a lot of pressure, more so I'd say in the last couple of years. I think we'd all agree that the
downside of social media, certainly.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I was quite happily posturing along until someone told me I wasn't good enough.
But don't let anyone, and even accountants, do not let accountants tell you that you are not good enough.
I mean, especially if you like some of the bookkeeping work that I've seen accountants do that we've had to spend hours and hours and hours and hours fixing. Like, it doesn't matter that you might have FCA after your name. A lot of them haven't got a clue about anything that happens at a transactional level. And there are accountants that unfortunately do look down their nose at bookkeepers, but actually, if as bookkeepers we didn't exist, none of those guys would have a job.
That's true. Yeah.
I think not to defend accountants, but I think it depends.
Go on, Gareth.
No, I think it depends on their background. So
sorry,
it does.
If you start in a small accounting firm, you do everything.
Yeah.
You don't just look at one area of audit or accounts or bookkeeping. You're doing everything for those small SMEs there. You get experience in everything, and you get you'll get sent on those bookkeeping courses, you know, yourself. You might have ICB, AAT or something, as well as whatever you do after that, if you decide to do more. And I've worked in small, medium and large. And when I worked in one of the big four, I did one thing every day to do with audit, one little niche thing for 2 years. And if I'd started in that big four firm, I would have no clue what to do with bookkeeping. Yeah, I could tell you now what the past exchange journal is, you know, when you're buying a new car and put it through, like all those, I grew up with those, I trained with all that. And I think, you know, it's not to blow me on trumpet, but it's knowing that there is a difference between every single accountant as well on the experience they get. But yeah, you're certainly right. You know what you're doing with bookkeeping. No one knows it better than yourselves as bookkeepers. And it's just working out who you're dealing with as well.
Very frustrating, I think, to bookkeepers that, you know we've got we are exactly like you said, we understand those transactions, and then when it goes off to be, you know, year ended and it gets onto company's house and you're looking at it going, that doesn't look like mine, and we have to kind of repeatedly request for journals and stuff. And I quite often have many times looked at it going, well, you know, there's no way that matters. How did you come up with those figures from the figures I gave you? It's weird.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes I think that's the thing. If you find a good accountant that you can work with that values you and your work, and
it's a two-way,
as well, stick with them, because there are some people, as Lara said, there are some really good accountants out there, and there's also good accountants that really value bookkeepers, and there are accountants that see bookkeepers as a means to an end and don't see what we can actually offer to clients. So it's, you find the right people, a bit like find your right people in your community that you want to work with. And it may not be one of the big communities. It might be something, it might be a group of friends. It might be you can set up your own little groups of people that you can work with. If that's the case, then just work with. If you ever feel pressured or you ever feel looked down on or judged or whatever it is, don't continue with that, because that's not going to be good for you and your mental health. Find the people that you can work with, that work with you, that work in a way that you can work, and that lift you up, not judge you down.
Yeah.
Which brings us on to Suzanne's last point about joining local and online groups. So
so like the Facebook groups, which is what I mentioned before, but also you know, there's join your branch, if you've got an if you're a member of ICB or another accounting body, if you've got a local branch, and do all those things, because there's so much support out there, and you get to meet other bookkeepers and people in the same position as you, and it is a real support. You can really bounce ideas off each other and support each other, and it helps you grow your business. It helps you grow and grow your mindset as well.
One of the things we said about what, go on.
I was going to say, I have to admit that last year was the first year I'd been to Summit. I tried to go a couple of times before and got injured twice. And couldn't turn up because I would have been on crutches. But last year was the first year in after 12 years of 11 years of being in, and I absolutely loved it.
Summit and the ICB Inspire tours and any other kind of events like that, and also some of the software
like QuickBooks Connect,
roadshow, Sage do a roadshow as well. So I'd recommend all of those.
Going and meeting people in person.
Meeting people, exactly. You're going to meet real people.
But the online stuff too is brilliant for every day.
The thing to bear in mind with a lot of people, if you do end up working from home, just know that it can be quite lonely when, you know, if you're just on your own pottering around doing the work. You may see a client or you talk to your clients or whatever else, but sometimes you forget there's a big old world out there, you know, and it's important to exactly talk to like-minded people, even if you just end up having a chat going, you'll find even if you end up, you know, various social gatherings of bookkeepers, we end up talking about work because it's just the way we are.
Look how much we've talked now.
We went on for 2 entire hours.
Literally double the length we should have done.
The other thing about going out to sort of shows and, you know, Accountex and things like that is, if, you know, when we talked hours ago now about niches and certain industries and things like that, there are often shows and trade shows and road shows and things that you can attend within those industries that will help your knowledge of that industry and therefore help you specialize in that industry more. So, for example, because we do a lot of hospitality work, we go to Hotel Olympia, so HRC or whatever it's called now. In a couple of weeks, we're going to the lunch show, and that's not accountancy and bookkeeping related, but we meet other bookkeepers and a load of accountants there as well. At the same time, we're picking up a lot of valuable information for our clients.
And I guess you get to make software that suits that industry. So that really
exactly.
I was thinking of that construction one, Lara, that you introduced me to at Accountex, you know, very specific software.
And we met a software vendor at Hotel Olympia this year, which is all about restaurant cost management and things like that. And it integrates with Xero, Sage and QuickBooks, and it integrates with the EPOS system that we sell. And it's absolutely amazing. And we're moving a couple of, it's big, expensive software. We're not going to sell thousands of them. We're moving a couple of clients onto it, and it's going to streamline our processes as well. So it was worth going just for that one thing. And all the free samples of food and that we got were completely irrelevant.
That's a bit like that question. What attracted you to that $1 billion man?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when you come home from Accountex and you need the extra suitcase for all the swag.
Yeah, no, we had to like bin a load of it off in departures before we got back on the plane because there was just too much stuff.
I was actually wondering this morning, I was thinking, I wonder if I've got any Xenon socks. Are you in the stock market? That's a good swag opportunity.
I'll have to get them.
We've got
where's the socks?
We've got notebooks, haven't we?
We have got notebooks.
Notebooks.
And Penny's in the market to get me some Ask the Accountant socks next week.
Fantastic. Right, there's 3 Facebook groups on the screen there for you. I'll pop them in an email. I've also put them in the chat as well. I recommend you join them all. Yeah, they're fantastic groups. Really the top one, I think everybody here is in that one that Natasha runs. It's a great group, thousands of members.
Very supportive.
Really
else. Second one, need to know mention, 6-Figure Bookkeepers Club. Help you grow your business.
That's brilliant. Well.
And this last one is one that we've set up. It's the 3rd Facebook group. It's specifically for cloud software and looking at cloud software and how accountants and bookkeepers deal with that. Come and join all 3. Something you can do quickly after the meeting. And we'd love to chat to you as well in the group. But just to wrap this up, a massive thanks to all the panelists for joining us today. There's been so much knowledge that's been shared. It's literally 2 hours of gold dust that's been shared. So thank you.
Twice the length. Sorry about that.
Thanks so much for taking the time out. You know, it's been absolutely fantastic. And I'm sure, even though it's been a long time for the attendees that are amazingly still on the call, quite a lot of them, you know, they'll have got so much value from this. So thank you all very much.
Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
Yeah,
and obviously add all of us on LinkedIn and ask us questions whenever you want. And, you know, we'll, as we promised, be really friendly and helpful.
Thank you all so much. Let's wrap this up. And until the next webinar, which hopefully won't be 2 hours long, we'll see you again. Thank you very much.
Cheers,
Cheers everyone.
Bye.